So tell us about the history of the museum within the region of Fort St. John and area.
So in 1963, there was a group of people in this area who thought we should really do something to preserve our history. And so they formed the North Peace Historical Society, and they were registered as a formal society in 1965. And they started collecting artifacts, stories, documents from this area because they realized that some of the early settlers and fur trade records, indigenous records, and so on really needed a place where they could all be collected. And so for years they worked to collect. They did small exhibits like at the curling club, and eventually they saved up enough money to move what was known as the H building from Central Elementary School, and they moved that to Peace Island Park, and that became the first museum. So it's called the Peace Island Park Museum. That opened in the 60s, and it continued to serve this area in the 70s, but they realized they needed to be able to expand and maybe have a museum in Fort St. John. They did a few trials in the early 80s. There was an Alaska Highway Museum in 1982 for the 40th anniversary of the construction of the Alaska Highway, and it was at Art Space, like where Whole Wheat and Honey is now. That was super successful. So in the late 70s, early 80s, they saved up enough money, and surprisingly, in the midst of a huge oil bust, they managed to build the museum in our current location.